The phone whisper told me to walk out now, and not to tell the man smiling across my kitchen table why. It was about a hidden signature, a forged future, and a son whose past had been erased by someone using my name. When the doorbell rings, it isn't family. It is the kind of knock that decides who owns a house and who owns their life. My name is Marlene Whitaker. I am 62 years old, and on this Tuesday morning in Providence Ridge, Vermont, the smell of coffee and burnt toast filled my kitchen. The air should have been comfortable. It was just breakfast. My son, Evan, sat across from me at the oak table, smiling that gentle smile he inherited from his father. He was 36, my only child, and his smile was the one thing in the world I trusted. Until my phone vibrated on the counter. I wiped my hands on my apron and glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but it immediately buzzed again, this time with a text. I opened it. The message was just 2 words. Answer it. A knot tightened in my stomach. The phone rang again, the same unknown number. I picked it up, pressing it to my ear with a hesitant, "Hello?" There was no greeting, just a dry, hurried whisper, a woman's voice I'd never heard. "Leave the house now. He's not who you think." The line clicked dead. I lowered the phone. My breath caught in my throat. The kitchen sounds, the ticking clock, the sizzle of the last pancake on the griddle, all faded into a dull roar. I looked at Evan. He was still smiling, but the expression seemed pasted on. A mask. "Everything okay, Mom?" he asked, his voice smooth as butter. My eyes drifted from his face down to his wrist, resting on the table next to his coffee mug. He was wearing a watch, a heavy, gold watch. It glittered under the kitchen light, expensive and severe. It was not his. Evan wore a digital fitness tracker, always. He hated jewelry. "Mom," he pressed, his smile faltering just a fraction. "You look pale." "It was just a wrong number." I lied. My voice sounded thin. He relaxed, leaning forward. "Good. Listen, while I have you, I just wanted to talk about those insurance papers. Just some updates. You know, to make sure you're taken care of. Just in case." Just in case. The words echoed the dread creeping up my spine. My phone lit up again. A new text from the same number. It was not words this time. It was an image. My hands shook as I zoomed in. It was a document. A full power of attorney. My name, Marlene Whitaker, was typed cleanly at the top, and at the bottom, on the signature line, was a messy scrawl that was supposed to be my name. It was a decent forgery, close, but the loop on the M was too tight, the W too sharp. I had not signed that paper. "And speaking of paperwork," Evan continued, his timing suddenly feeling less like coincidence and more like an ambush. "I have a few small procedures here related to the house tax, just routine stuff to sign." He reached for the briefcase leaning against his chair. Before he could open it, a sound from the hallway made me jump. The soft click of the back door easing shut. Brianna, Evan's wife. I hadn't even realized she was home. I heard her voice, a low murmur, sharp and urgent, coming from the mudroom. "Get it done this morning," she whispered to someone on her own phone. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at Evan, at the fake signature on my screen, and I knew the whispered warning was true. I had to see what he was holding. "Oh, goodness," I gasped, lurching forward and knocking my coffee mug. Hot liquid splashed across the table, dangerously close to his briefcase. "Mom, watch it," Evan yelled, jumping back. "I'm so sorry. Evan, how clumsy of me," I said, grabbing a dish towel. As I leaned over to wipe the spill, I angled my body, my phone still clutched in my left hand. I pretended to steady myself on the table, my hand hovering just over the open briefcase. He had a stack of papers ready, the top one visible. The letterhead was stark, North River Title and Notary. I pressed the volume button twice. A snapshot. The flash was off. I straightened up, dabbing at the non-existent spill on his case. All clean. My phone vibrated one last time. "If you want to live peacefully." The text read, "Walk out the front door before they send the next package to the bank." They were moving fast. The insurance, the tax forms, the power of attorney. It was a full-scale assault. I forced my lips into the shape of a smile. It felt brittle, like thin ice. "You know, Evan, I just realized the trash bin is full. Let me just run this out to the curb before the truck comes." "Mom, the papers?" he started, his patience wearing thin. "It will only take a second, dear," I said, putting on the same indulgent smile I'd used when he was a toddler. I pulled the heavy plastic bag from the can. I walked to the front door, not the back. I didn't grab my purse. I didn't grab my coat. I just opened the door, stepped onto the porch of the house I had lived in for 40 years, and walked down the steps, the trash bag heavy in my hand. I reached the curb. I put the bag down, and I did not go back inside. I didn't run. I walked, fueled by an icy calm that settled over the panic. I walked 4 blocks, the thin plastic of the trash bag biting into my fingers, and slipped into the back booth of the Sparrow Creek Diner. I ordered coffee I wouldn't drink and tried to make sense of the last hour, the last 3 years. This house, the one on Maple Hollow Road, was my life. My husband, Tom, used to say this house had bones, and we had put the flesh on them. Tom was a good man, steady and kind, gone too soon from a stroke that stole him in his sleep 5 years ago. We bought the place when Evan was just a baby, a run-down Victorian that nobody wanted. Every brick, every shingle, every hardwood plank was paid for with overtime. Tom worked the docks, and I spent nearly 40 years at Northwind Freight, managing schedules. I knew logistics. I knew how to make things move. I retired with a handshake, a decent pension, and this house, free and clear. It was supposed to be my fortress. The siege began quietly. It started 3 years ago. Evan and Brianna, with their daughter Piper, who was 6 at the time, showed up on my doorstep with suitcases. Evan had lost his job, another one. Brianna said they just needed a soft place to land. "Just 6 months, Mum, I swear," Evan had said, hugging me. "Just 6 months to get back on our feet." 6 months turned into a year, then 2. At first, it was nice. I loved having Piper in the house. But Brianna began to adjust things. She called it optimizing. She rearranged my kitchen, the one I'd cooked in for 4 decades, until I couldn't find my own measuring cups. Then, she insisted on changing the lock on the old wooden file cabinet in the study. "For Piper's safety," she'd chirped. "We don't want her getting into important papers." That cabinet held everything the deed to the house. Tom's death certificate, my pension documents. I gave her the spare key, and soon after, the lock was changed entirely. I was told the new key was in a safe place. The bills started to climb. The water, the electric. The house was full. Lights on in every room. The television blaring day and night. "We'll cover it, Mum," Evan would promise, waving his hand dismissively. "Don't you worry about a thing." But the money never appeared, and the polite notices from the utility company kept coming, addressed to me. Then they took my bedroom. "Mum, it just makes sense," Brianna had explained, her voice syrupy with false concern. "We have a small child, and the master bedroom has the ensuite. It's just easier for Piper." So I moved my things, the remnants of my life with Tom, out of the room we had shared. I moved into the small guest room at the end of the hall, the one that shares a wall with the hot water heater. It clicks and groans all night. I hadn't slept soundly in 2 years. People noticed. My best friend, Joyce, who lives across the street, commented that she barely saw me anymore. Our weekly brunch group had stopped calling after I'd declined 5 invitations in a row. Brianna's hosting her book club. I'd lie. I don't want to be in the way. The truth was, I felt like a guest, and I was embarrassed. Piper was a bright spot, a confused little bird in that tense house. She adored me. She'd sneak into my little room in the mornings and crawl into my cot. "Grandma, read me the story," she'd whisper. One afternoon, while we were gardening, she'd looked up and called me Mom by accident. The look Brianna shot me was cold enough to freeze water. She corrected Piper sharply and kept the girl inside for the rest of the day. Evan, my sweet boy, became a stranger who lived down the hall. He was always busy, always on his phone, talking vaguely about a new real estate project that was about to pop. He needed to leverage assets and move some capital. It was all air. There was never any proof, never any paycheck. The seeds of manipulation had been planted so slowly. I hadn't realized I was living in a different garden. The house on Maple Hollow was still in my name, Marlene Whitaker. But the power, the control, the very feeling of home, no longer belonged to me. The phone call at breakfast hadn't been the start. It was just the moment the pot finally boiled over. The heat had been building for months, not with loud arguments, but with the quiet, methodical scraping away of my life, starting with my money. I've balanced my own books since I got my first paycheck. When I saw my savings account draining, I knew it wasn't a bank error. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Small, automated transfers I had never set up. $50 for a service charge, $100 for an account maintenance fee. When I showed Evan the statements, he'd waved it off. "It's predatory. Mum, they target seniors. Let me handle the bank from now on." I let him. The bleeding continued. Then came the disappearing act. I kept my most important documents, Tom's death certificate, the deed to the house, our old savings bonds in a small fireproof lockbox in my closet. One day, it was gone. I tore my room apart. I checked the attic. I felt a cold panic, the kind that makes you feel dizzy. Evan suggested I'd misplaced it. "Mum, you're getting so forgetful lately," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "Are you sure you didn't put it somewhere safe? Brianna found it 2 days later?" It was in the bottom drawer of Evan's desk, tucked under a pile of his old college notebooks. "You must have put it here and forgotten. Marlene," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "See, this is why I think I should just organize all these papers for you. It's too much for you to keep track of." The polite suggestion became an insistence, but the true alarm, the one that jolted me fully awake, arrived in a crisp white envelope from my bank. It was a letter, cheerfully congratulating me on the approval of a new $8,000 home equity line of credit. A line of credit I had never applied for. The signature on the enclosed application was Marlene Whitaker, but it wasn't my hand. When I confronted them, holding the letter, their act was perfected. Evan looked stricken, turning to Brianna. We discussed this, remember? Mom, for the new roof. You signed the forms last week. I had never signed those forms. We had not discussed a new roof. Oh, Marlene. Brianna sighed, taking the letter from my trembling hand. You really don't remember? This is getting serious. She said she would hold on to the paperwork, just to keep things tidy. But I am not a fool. I ran logistics at Northwind Freight for 38 years. I tracked thousands of shipments across 3 continents. I know how to see a pattern. I said nothing more. I let them think I was confused. And then I started gathering my own evidence. My weapon was an old smartphone. One Piper had begged me to get so she could send me pictures of her drawings. She had taught me how to use the camera, how to zoom in, how to make sure the picture was clear. I photographed everything. The bank statements, the credit line approval, every piece of mail with my name on it that looked even slightly official. I photographed it before Brianna could file it away for me. Their greatest mistake, however, was the gift Brianna gave me for my birthday. A Ridge Bell doorbell camera. She insisted on installing it herself. It's for your safety, Mum, she'd said, so you can see who's at the door. What she didn't realize was that the main unit, the one installed on the back porch because the wiring was easier, had a sensitive microphone. It recorded audio snippets whenever it sensed motion, saving them to a cloud account I supposedly didn't know how to access. But the main panel in the kitchen showed the feed. One night, last week, I couldn't sleep. The hot water heater in my small room was groaning, and I'd gone to get some tea. I saw the camera feed was active. Evan and Brianna were on the porch, smoking in the dark. I turned the volume up just a fraction. Brianna's voice was sharp, cutting through the sound of the crickets. It's clean. Once the joint tenancy deed is filed, we sell it off market immediately. I already have the cash buyer. Are you sure? Evan sounded nervous. I'm sure, she snapped. By the time she figures it out, the house will be gone, and the money will be where it needs to be. A week later, a strange man in a shiny suit showed up. Brianna met him on the porch. Marlene, this is a friend. He's just doing a quick internal assessment for our insurance. She smiled, but it was all teeth. Why don't you take Piper to the market? Get yourselves a treat. I went. But not before I used Piper's phone to take a picture of the man's car and license plate through the blinds. The final piece of the puzzle came from Piper herself. She was colouring at the kitchen table yesterday, muttering to herself. Miss April says the house is pretty, she announced to no one. Who is Miss April? Honey, I asked, keeping my voice light. She comes to see Daddy sometimes, Piper said, grabbing a blue crayon. Mommy doesn't like her. She says Miss April is trouble. April. The name echoed in my head, and as I sat in the diner, the smell of stale coffee filling my lungs, I remembered the voice on the phone, the high, panicked whisper. Leave the house now. He's not who you think. It was April. The forged credit line. The off-market realtor. The recorded conversation about a joint tenancy deed. And now, a terrified warning from an insider. It all fit together. The breakfast this morning. The insurance papers and tax forms. It wasn't paperwork. It was the closing act of their theft. I left the diner, the coffee still steaming on the table, and walked the familiar path to Joyce's house across the street. My hands were steady now. The panic had burned away, leaving a cold, hard clarity. I knocked, and when she opened the door, her face etched with worry, I put a finger to my lips. "Marlene, I saw you walk away from the house. I was about to call." "Joyce, I need to borrow your phone," I whispered. "Not the landline. Your cell. And I need to be where no one can see me." She led me to her back sunroom, and I dialed the number for Camilla Hart, a lawyer I'd seen on a local news segment about elder fraud. Her voice, when she answered, was exactly what I needed. Not soft, not sympathetic, but sharp, like a tool. I explained my situation in the clipped, efficient language of a Northwind freight dispatcher. I was 62. I lived on Maple Hollow. My son and his wife lived with me. I had a forged power of attorney on my phone, a fraudulent credit line, and a whispered warning to run. Camilla Hart, who I learned was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, didn't waste time on shock. "Mrs. Whitaker, you are in a cat-and-mouse game, and you are currently the mouse. We are going to change that. Your most powerful weapon right now is their assumption that you are frail and confused. You will not confront them. You will not pack a bag. You will, for now, play the part they have cast for you. You will gather evidence, and you will maintain the status quo." I hung up, my mind racing. I was a scheduler. I understood logistics. This was a war of details. My first stop was the bank, a different branch downtown. I opened a new, private checking account. I rerouted my pension direct deposit. I reported my debit card lost to freeze the main account Evan had access to, and I placed a fraud alert on my credit. My second stop was the post office, where I rented a new P.O. box. My mail was no longer safe at my own house. I went back to Joyce's. "I need a safe way to talk," I told her. "Thursday brunch," she said instantly. "We used to have it every week. I'll start inviting you again. Every Thursday, 10 a.m. sharp. You can use my phone. He'll just think I'm being a nosy neighbor." While I played the part of the forgetful mother, Camilla Hart went to work. She took the blurry photo I'd snapped of the North River Title and Notary letterhead and hired a private investigator. The report came back 48 hours later, delivered via Joyce's phone. North River Title and Notary was a ghost. The address was a rented mailbox at a shipping center. The notary seal on the forged documents. It was a fake, purchased online, not registered to any official in the state. I went back to the house that evening, my stomach in knots. Brianna was annoyed I'd been gone so long. "You missed your lunch. Marlene, you have to remember to eat." Later. I sat with Piper while she was drawing. She was sketching our house. "Look, Grandma," she said, holding it up. It was a chaotic drawing, full of colour. And there, on the front lawn, she had drawn her mother and father next to a big, square sign. On the sign, she'd scribbled a $sign and a series of numbers. "What a wonderful party. Honey," I said, my blood running cold. "It's not a party," Piper said, not looking up. "It's the open house. That's the price sign." I kissed her on the head and went to my small, noisy room. My old phone, the one Piper had taught me to use, vibrated. A new text from my anonymous savior. Don't sign anything Friday morning. They are moving up the timeline. They are calling it the property tax file. It's the deed. I forwarded it immediately to Hart. It was the final piece she needed. With the investigator's report on the fake notary, the fraudulent $8,000 credit line, and the text messages proving a timeline, she went to an emergency session with a judge. She didn't ask to have them evicted. Not yet. That would warn them. Instead, she got a temporary restraining order, filed quietly, that froze my assets. Not from me, but from them. It blocked any and all title transfers, forbade any new lines of credit, and prohibited access to my safety deposit box, effective immediately. They could push a stack of papers in front of me. They could even force my signature, but the law would no longer recognize it. That night, while they slept, I did two more things. I quietly changed the combination on the old safe in Tom's study, and I logged into the Ridgebell camera settings from my phone. Brianna had installed it, but she had used my email to register the account. I enabled the automatic cloud storage for all audio files. Every whisper on that porch was now being saved. Hart's PI had one last piece of information, delivered just before I fell into a fitful sleep. The warning voice. April. She wasn't just a random friend. She was Brianna's half-sister, a woman Brianna had apparently cheated in an inheritance dispute years ago. She wasn't an angel. She was just someone with a guilty conscience and a long-standing grudge. And she was my only ally. Friday morning arrived with the heavy stillness of a held breath. The air in the kitchen was thick with unspoken agendas. Evan was waiting for me, the same oak table between us. He had traded his gentle smile for a look of strained patience. "Morning, Mum," he said, tapping a pen against a thick, leather-bound folder. "Let's get this done so we can all relax." He laid out the tax exemption forms and the insurance updates he'd mentioned. He pushed a pen toward me. I pulled my old phone from my apron pocket and set it on the table, screen down, as if I were just moving it out of the way. I had already hit record. "Just let me read what I'm signing." "Evan," I said, my voice quiet. I pulled my reading glasses from my pocket and put them on. A deliberate, slow movement. I opened the folder. The top page was buried in legal text, but I didn't need to read it all. The title was clear enough, even if they'd buried it under a cover sheet. To stall, to capture his voice. I read an innocuous sentence from the middle of the page aloud. "This agreement shall be binding upon all parties and their respective heirs, administrators, and assigns." I let my voice trail off, as if confused. "This sounds complicated." Evan sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. "Mom, it's just standard language. Just sign here, and here." Brianna entered the kitchen then, holding her own phone. "Is she done yet?" she asked Evan, not me. "She's reading it," he grumbled. Brianna let out a sharp, impatient breath. "Marlene, for heaven's sake, just sign it so the realtor can open the private open house this afternoon." I let the silence hang for a beat. The recording was capturing it all, her admission. Evan's pressure. Then, I very calmly closed the folder. I took off my glasses and met my son's eyes. "Honey," I said, my voice perfectly level. "This document is a deed of trust. It's not a tax exemption." The air went tight. Evan's face, which had been a mask of false patience, hardened into something I didn't recognize. It was cold. "What did you just say?" I said. "This is a deed of trust," I repeated, not raising my voice. This would give you the authority to borrow against the house, or to sell it. It's not a tax form. Mom. Evan's voice was low and dangerous. You are turning against your own family. I am protecting my family, I said, and protecting this house. Before he could answer, the doorbell rang, a cheerful, two-tone chime that cut through the tension. Brianna swore under her breath. Who is that? I already knew. I'll get it. I walked to the front door. Joyce was standing on the porch, holding a plate covered in foil. Marlene, dear, she boomed, loud enough for the kitchen to hear. I made far too many waffles. She pushed the plate into my hands. As my fingers closed around the warm dish, her other hand shot out, pressing a single, cold key into my palm. The key to her back door. Enjoy, dear, she said, giving me a hard, meaningful look. I palmed the key. When I turned back, Piper was standing in the entryway, her small face pale. She had clearly been listening. As I walked past her, she darted forward, her hand grabbing my apron pocket. Grandma, she whispered, her voice so small I could barely hear it. Miss April said to give this to you. She said it's for the bad people. She slipped something small and hard into my pocket. A USB drive. Before I could even close my hand around it, Evan was there. What did you give her? Piper. Give it to me. He didn't wait for an answer. He plunged his hand into my apron pocket, his fingers brushing mine as he snatched the small drive. He held it up, his face dark with rage. Spying on us. Mum, using your own granddaughter. I looked past him, directly at the red light on the Ridgebell camera hub in the entryway. It was active. Evan, I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. You just took evidence from me, on camera. Thank you for that. His face went white. He looked at the camera, then at the USB in his hand, as if it had burned him. I will be having my lawyer review these documents, I announced to the room. That's when Evan broke. He slammed his fist on the antique hall table, making a vase Tom had loved rattle dangerously. Lawyer. You're getting a lawyer against your own son. Brianna, however, didn't panic. She went straight to business. She grabbed her phone and walked to the mudroom, her voice a sharp command. The timeline is pushed up. Now. Forget the signing. We're moving to the next step. I'll meet you there. I knew my window was closed. I picked up my purse from the hook. I'm going to the grocery store, I said, as if I hadn't just watched my life implode. You're not going anywhere, Evan snarled, stepping in front of me. I am, I said, looking him dead in the eye. Unless you plan to physically stop me, which is also on camera. He hesitated, his fists clenched. That hesitation was all I needed. I walked out the front door, down the steps, and didn't look back. I didn't go to my car. I walked straight across the street, up Joyce's driveway, and let myself in the back door with the key she had given me. Camilla Hart was sitting at Joyce's kitchen table, a briefcase open, waiting for me. He has the USB drive, I said, my voice hollow, as I sat at Joyce's table. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me exhausted. Evan snatched it, Piper gave it to me, and he just took it. Camilla Hart didn't flinch. She was already opening her laptop. Did he now? On camera, you said that's coercion, which is excellent, but I'm not worried about the drive. She looked at me, her gaze sharp. You mentioned a Ridgebell camera. You enabled cloud storage. What's the password? I gave it to her. My old email. The password Tom and I used for everything, based on our anniversary. Within a minute, Camilla was logged into the Ridgebell dashboard. A long list of audio files appeared, time-stamped, organized by date. She installed it, I murmured. But she used my email to register it. A fatal mistake, Camilla muttered, clicking on a file from 2 nights ago, labeled Motion Detected, Back Porch. We sat in Joyce's quiet, sunlit kitchen and listened to the sounds of my home being stolen. Brianna's voice was the first one, clear and cold. Absolutely. Sell it first. Off-market, cash. The money hits the new account, and we use it to pay off Evan's marker. It's done. Evan's voice was nervous, muffled. And Mom. Mom? Brianna scoffed. We'll be in a very nice, very quiet facility that specializes in memory care by then. I put a hand to my mouth. Joyce's hand found mine under the table. Camilla clicked another file. This one was Brianna, on the phone. The price is firm. It's a steal. And you know it. I don't care about your lender from the next county. Just have the cash ready. Yes. Friday, 4 p.m. Camilla snapped the laptop shut. She's not just selling the house. She's laundering money for Evan's debts, and she's doing it with a hard money lender, which means this is moving at the speed of light. This is no longer a quiet civil matter. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, and it's happening today. She was on her feet, phone to her ear, pacing Joyce's linoleum. Her voice was pure steel. I need an emergency ex parte hearing for a temporary eviction order. Basis is financial elder fraud. Immediate risk of irreparable harm and dissipation of assets. Yes. Judge. I have audio. I also have a witness to the forgery. North River title. It's a shell. She held the phone from her ear, looked at me. She'll also need a civil standby to serve the papers. She spoke back into the phone. We need a unit at 4 p.m. That's when the illegal open house is scheduled. It's an active crime scene. Her next call was to Child Protective Services. Her voice softened, but only just. I am a private attorney representing Marlene Whitaker. I am filing for an emergency eviction of her son and daughter-in-law. There is a minor child in the home. Piper. No. I have no evidence of physical abuse toward the child. But she is in an unstable environment, and I do not want her traumatized when the locks are changed. I need an advocate for the child, on site, at 4 p.m. My phone vibrated. A text from April. They are pushing. I heard Brianna on the phone. They are moving the money. I will testify. But you cannot use my name. Not in front of her. She'll run. Camilla finished her call and looked at the text I showed her. Good. She's scared. She'll be a reliable witness. Camilla pulled a set of documents from her briefcase. Marlene, this is our retainer. And this, she tapped a second page, is a limited power of attorney. It does not give me your house. It gives me the power to represent you, to file these orders, and to protect your property. You, and only you, remain the owner. You are in control. My hand was shaking. I looked at the signature line. After seeing my name forged so many times, it felt strange to write it myself. I signed, my letters firm. Joyce, Camilla said, not looking up. Does your guest room have a lock? It does now, Joyce said, her jaw set. She went to prepare the room. I sat at the table, breathing in the scent of coffee and lemon polish, and for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't listening to the groan of a hot water heater. Just then, Joyce's doorbell rang. We all froze. It was a courier, a young man in a brown uniform. Package for M. Whitaker. But at this address, it's weird. It got mixed in with my... Camilla stepped forward. I'll take it. She took the large envelope. Inside was a pristine, unbound copy of the deed of trust from that morning, and a small, sticky note. He took the USB, but he can't take the cloud. Here is a clean copy. The fake notary seal was perfect. A perfect, fraudulent stamp. Camilla laid the document next to her laptop, which was still playing a quiet loop of Brianna's voice. She looked at me, and a cold, thin smile touched her lips. That's enough, she said. We're going into that house this afternoon. Marlene, and we are doing it legally. At exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we walked across the street. From Joyce's porch, we could see my house, the one Tom and I had built, dressed up for its own violation. Balloons, bright and offensively cheerful, were tied to the porch railing. Soft music drifted from an open window. On a small table near the door, Brianna had set up a guest book and a vase of flowers. The off-market realtor, the same man from the internal assessment, stood there, smiling, a folder in his hand. Joyce's hand was a vice on mine. Steady, Marlene, she whispered. Camilla Hart walked in front. 2 local police officers flanked her, and a calm-looking woman I knew must be the social worker, Ms. Alvarez, walked beside me. We walked up the path. The realtor's smile froze when he saw the uniforms. Camilla didn't knock. She opened the front door. Brianna was in the entryway, fluffing a cushion. She looked up, her face a mask of triumph that curdled into pure hatred when she saw us. "What is this?" she shrieked. "You can't be here. This is a private showing. Get out of my house." "It is not your house, Mrs. Cole," Camilla said, her voice cutting through the soft music. She held up the court order. "This is a temporary eviction notice and restraining order, signed by Judge Miller. This house belongs to Marlene Whitaker. You have 30 minutes to collect your essential personal belongings. You will be escorted." Evan came running from the kitchen. "Mum, what did you do? You're lying. You're telling lies about us." "Am I, Evan?" I asked. My voice was quiet, but it carried. Camilla nodded to one of the officers, who was holding her phone, which was connected to the Ridge Bell speaker hub. "Play the audio file from last night," Camilla ordered. Suddenly, Evan's own voice filled the entryway, echoing from the device Brianna herself had installed. It was boasting. "It's clean," his voice bragged. "Once the joint tenancy deed is filed, and we're clearing Mom's name right off the deed." Evan's face turned the color of ash. He looked at the speaker, then at me, with a look of utter betrayal. The realtor, who had been frozen on the porch, sprang into action. He snatched the balloons from the railing, ripped his name badge from his suit, and threw his folder into his car. "I was misled," he yelled, mostly to the police. "I was told the owner was in full agreement. I'm out of here." He sped off. Piper ran out from the living room, terrified by the shouting, and launched herself at my legs, burying her face in my skirt. I'm scared of the grown-up yelling. Grandma, Ms. Alvarez, the social worker, knelt beside her, her voice incredibly gentle. Hi, Piper. My name is Rosa. You're not in any trouble. We're just here to make sure everyone is safe. Why don't you and I go up to your room and pick out your favorite toys to take with us? She didn't pull the child away from me, but she offered her a calm, new focus. Piper, crying, eventually let go and took her hand. 30 minutes, the officer repeated, his voice flat. What followed was a blur of frantic, angry motion. Evan was silent, defeated, throwing clothes into a duffel bag. Brianna, however, was a storm. She stalked from room to room, grabbing jewelry, laptops, and her expensive makeup, all under the watchful eye of the second officer. As she passed me on her way out the door, her arms full, she leaned in close, her voice a low, vicious hiss that only I could hear. You old fool, you will not win this. I will end you. Camilla, standing right behind me, heard it, threatening a protected party in front of council. She noted clearly, typing it into her phone. That will be in my next filing. Brianna's eyes widened, realizing her mistake, and she stormed out. Evan was the last to leave. He walked past me, his head down, carrying his duffel bag. As he reached the doorway, something heavy and gold slipped from his jacket pocket, where he must have stuffed it. It hit the hardwood floor with a solid, sickening thud. The watch. The gold watch I'd seen on his wrist that morning. He stopped, but he didn't pick it up. I bent down, my knees cracking, and retrieved it. I turned it over in my palm. The back was just as I remembered it, from the day I gave it to Tom for our 20th anniversary. The engraving was clear. T. Blood. Tom Whitaker. My husband. His father. Evan didn't look back. He just walked out the door. The officer closed it behind him. The click of the deadbolt was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Camilla handed me my key, the original one, which she must have retrieved. I was standing in my own hallway. The music was off. The balloons were gone. But the silence that settled over the house wasn't peace. It was just the absence of war. That first night, the house was cavernously quiet. The silence was a physical presence, pressing in on me, no longer muffled by the hum of their televisions or the constant thud of their footsteps. I walked through the rooms, my rooms, and began the reclamation. I started in the living room. Brianna's garish, tasseled pillows were thrown in a pile. The heavy, dark curtains she'd installed were pulled down, letting the moonlight flood the floorboards Tom and I had sanded by hand. I found my old photo albums, which she had stored in a box in the coat closet, and placed them back on the coffee table. I moved the sofa back to where it had always been. It was an exorcism by interior design. I worked until 3 a.m, restoring the layout Tom had loved, erasing the 3 years they had lived here. When the sun came up, I sat at the kitchen table, the one where the confrontation had happened, and drank a cup of coffee. I took a pad of yellow sticky notes. I made a list. Change every lock, front, back, and cellar. New smoke detectors, check batteries. New lock for the file cabinet. Order from hardware store. I was a scheduler. This was just a new, more personal set of logistics. Camilla Hart called me at 8 a.m. sharp. You did well, Marlene, she said. Her voice clipped. But this is the intermission, not the finale. The hearing for a permanent order is next. They will fight back, and their only move is to attack you. What do you mean? I asked, looking at my list. They will paint you as confused, frail, and forgetful. They will argue that Evan was managing your affairs because you were incompetent. They will say you are being manipulated by a greedy lawyer. Be prepared. Your memory will be on trial. I looked at the phone. Ms. Hart, I said, my voice cold. I managed the payroll and freight scheduling for Northwind Freight for 38 years. I balanced ledgers to the penny. I don't forget numbers. Good, she said. You'll need to say that in court. We also discussed Piper. My heart ached for her. The court arranged for supervised visitation. I could see her, but only at a neutral location, and with Ms. Alvarez, the social worker, present. The rules were absolute. I was not to discuss the case. Evan, or Brianna in any way. I just had to be a grandmother, in a sterile room, for 1 hour a week. Later that day, my old phone buzzed with a text from April. You're safe for now. Just so you know, Brianna started this. She has massive debts. From before she even met Evan. He wasn't the predator. He was just her broken life raft. He's weak, and she used his weakness to get to your house. It should have made me feel better, to know my son was a fool rather than a monster. It didn't. It just made the pain deeper. I looked at a picture of him on the mantel, him at 8 years old, holding up a fish he'd caught with his father. How does that boy become this man? The anger I felt was clean and hot, but beneath it was the messy, agonizing grief of a mother. I loved my son, but I would not let him destroy me. My first instinct was to call a lawyer and change my will, to write him out, to erase him as he had tried to erase me. But I stopped. I held the phone in my hand. No, that was an emotional move. Camilla was right. This was a war of strategy. I would not change a single legal document until after the hearing. I would keep everything exactly as it was. I would not give them any ammunition, not let them claim I was acting rashly. On Wednesday, Joyce called. Marlene, I'm bringing the brunch group over for tea. You don't have a choice. At 2 p.m., my living room, my old, clean living room, was full of the women I had known for 30 years. Joyce, Mary, and Eleanor. They didn't ask probing questions. They just brought tea, and they sat. They talked about the garden club, about the new stoplight, and in doing so, they formed a silent, powerful wall around me. They were my character witnesses. Let Brianna's lawyer try to tell a judge I was an isolated, confused old woman. That night, before I went to bed, I went to the hall table, Tom's watch, with the engraved T, was still sitting there. I picked it up. It was heavy, the gold worn smooth. This was the proof of Evan's final petty theft. He had not just tried to steal my house, he had stolen his own father's memory. I didn't polish it. I didn't put it in my jewelry box. I found the small, velvet-lined box it had originally come in. I closed the watch inside, the click of the lid sounding final. I placed the box on my dresser, next to my list of things to fix. It was evidence, but it was also a symbol. The house was mine. The memories were mine. And I was ready for the hearing. The courtroom wasn't a grand chamber of justice. It was a beige, windowless room on the 3rd floor of the county building, smelling of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Evan and Brianna sat at a table with their lawyer, a man in a sharp suit who looked annoyed to be there. I sat at another table with Camilla Hart. Their lawyer went first, his voice smooth and condescending. He painted a picture of me, Marlene Whitaker, as a woman sinking into a gentle, confused twilight. He used phrases like cognitive decline and understandable forgetfulness. He portrayed Evan as the dutiful son, the financial caregiver, who was only trying to manage his mother's complex affairs to protect her from herself. I sat still, my hands folded, and let him build his house of cards. When it was Camilla's turn, she didn't attack. She simply presented the schedule. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and factual. "This is not a case of confusion. This is a case of conspiracy." She began with the chain of small, automated transfers out of my savings. She presented the forged application for the $8,000 line of credit. She submitted the investigator's report on North River Title and Notary, proving its address was a mail drop and its notary seal was a counterfeit. The realtor was called. He looked pale. He testified that he had been led to believe it was an urgent, off-market sale. "I only ever spoke with Mrs. Cole," he said, not looking at Brianna. "She told me the owner was in frail health and had already signed all the necessary authorizations." Then came April. Her testimony was anonymous, her voice slightly digitized, played from a secure video link with her face blurred. She calmly described the pressure Brianna was under from hard money lenders and the plan to sell the house for cash, off-market, to pay those debts. Evan was agitated, shifting in his chair, his leg bouncing. Brianna sat like a statue of ice. "Your Honor," Camilla continued, "the defendant's actions were not just about the property. They extended to personal items, heirlooms." She produced a photograph. Exhibit D, a gold watch engraved T.W. It belonged to Mrs. Whitaker's late husband, Tom. It was taken by Mr. Whitaker from his mother's home. Evan's lawyer jumped up. "Objection relevance. It speaks directly to the pattern of theft and the defendant's state of mind." "Your Honor," Camilla said smoothly, "he wasn't managing anything. He was stealing." The judge overruled the objection. And that, not the house, not the money, was what broke my son. Evan stood up so fast his chair nearly fell over. "I was going to give it back," he shouted, his voice cracking. His lawyer hissed, "Evan, sit down." But the dam was broken. "She made me," he pleaded, looking at the judge, his face wet with tears. I have a problem. A gambling problem. The debts. They were going to hurt us." Brianna said this was the only way, that it was just paperwork to leverage assets. "I signed the papers. Yes. But I never thought." He blamed the debt. He blamed Brianna. He blamed everyone but himself. Brianna's face was a mask of contempt. When Evan fell silent, she spoke, her voice chillingly calm. "He is lying to save himself. I knew nothing about his gambling. I knew nothing about any of this. I was just trying to keep my family together." "In that case, Your Honor," Camilla said, "I have one final exhibit." She signaled the clerk, and suddenly the courtroom was filled with Brianna's voice, piped in from the Ridgebell cloud storage. "It's clean. Once the joint tenancy deed is filed, we sell it off-market immediately. I already have the cash buyer." The silence that followed was absolute. Brianna just stared ahead, her denial hanging in the air, exposed. The judge, a woman who looked like she'd seen everything, didn't hesitate. "The temporary eviction is made permanent. The court recognizes Marlene Whitaker as the sole legal owner of the property. The fraudulent filings are null and void." She looked at Evan and Brianna, her eyes cold. The court finds sufficient evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and financial elder abuse. I am referring this entire file, with all exhibits, to the District Attorney's Office for criminal review. She wasn't finished. As for the minor child, this court finds no evidence of physical abuse. However, the environment provided by Mr. Cole and Mrs. Cole is one of profound instability and criminality. All parental visitation will be strictly supervised by Child Protective Services, pending the results of the criminal investigation. She struck her gavel. Any appeal can be filed with the clerk. For tonight, Mrs. Whitaker, you are free to go home. To your home. The next morning, I was at the kitchen table. It was just past 7, the same time as that first awful call. The house was quiet, but it was my quiet. I was making coffee, just for myself. The front door opened. My whole body went rigid. I grabbed the edge of the table. It was Evan. He was alone. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His clothes were wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. He stood in the entryway, just looking at me, his frame trembling. "Mom," he whispered, his voice broken. I'm not the man you think I am." Before I could find a single word to say to him, my phone, the one I had placed on the counter, rang. "April." I snatched it up. "April, what is it?" Her voice was high-pitched, terrified. "Marlene, you have to get out. Brianna, she's coming back. She's with the cash buyers. They aren't just lenders. Marlene, they're dangerous. They think you cheated them out of the deal. She's lost her mind. She's coming to get the original deed, any papers, anything she can leverage. Get out of the house. Now." I looked at Evan, who was watching me, his face pale and confused. This time, I didn't run. I pressed the button for the speakerphone, my hand steady. I placed the phone in the middle of the oak table, a divider between me and my son. April's panicked breathing filled the room. "Evan," I said, my voice as cold and clear as the morning air. "You heard her. Your wife is bringing criminals to my door. Right now. If you are on my side, if there is any part of you left, you will stand here. If you are with her, you will walk out that door before they arrive." He didn't move. He just stared at the phone as if it were a snake. A moment later, headlights swept across the kitchen windows. A heavy black SUV roared up my driveway, stopping inches from the porch steps. A heavy, violent pounding shook the front door. "Marlene Whitaker, open the door. We're here to see the deed and close this transaction." Evan jumped, shrinking back against the wall. "I will not," I called back, my voice shaking but loud. "Open the door, or we will." The doorknob rattled, followed by a heavy shoulder hitting the wood. And then, from the side of the house, a new voice. "Providence Ridge Police. Step away from the door and show me your hands." I ran to the living room window. Camilla Hart was striding up the driveway, flanked by the same 2 officers from the eviction. April had warned her, and Camilla had been waiting. The 2 men by the door froze, their hands up. The back door of the SUV flew open. Brianna scrambled out, clutching a briefcase. She saw the police. She saw Camilla, and her face, for a second, was pure shock. Then it twisted into a mask of pure fury. "This is my property," she shrieked, clutching the case to her chest. "I have the agreement. You can't stop me." She made a frantic dash for the porch, trying to run past the officers. "Mrs. Cole, one of the officers said, stepping in front of her. You are in direct violation of a restraining order. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud. The officer grabbed her arm. She fought, clawing at him, still screaming that it was her house. The briefcase fell open, scattering useless copies of forged documents across my lawn. As the second officer cuffed her hands behind her back, she stopped fighting. She became completely still. She twisted her head, her eyes finding mine through the window. The look she gave me was not of anger. It was of cold, bottomless hatred. A promise. Then they put her in the car, and she was gone. The two men from the hard moneylender were already in their own car, peeling out in reverse. I turned from the window. The kitchen was silent, save for the sound of Evan, quietly sobbing against the wall. He pushed himself off the wall and walked slowly to the table. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thin white envelope. He slid it onto the table. It's the first, he whispered. It's not much. For the money I took. He then reached into his other pocket and pulled out the heavy, gold watch. Tom's watch. He placed it gently on the table next to the envelope, pushing it toward me. He still wouldn't look at me. I picked up the watch. I said nothing. He looked at me, just once. His eyes full of a shame so deep I wasn't sure he would ever recover from it. Then he turned and walked out of my house. An hour later, there was a different knock, a gentle one. It was Ms. Alvarez, the social worker, and beside her, holding her hand, was Piper. Hi, Grandma, Piper whispered. My throat was too tight to speak. I just knelt and held her. I made blueberry muffins. I finally managed. They're still warm. We sat at the kitchen table, just the two of us. Ms. Alvarez sat quietly in the living room, giving us our space. Piper ate 3 muffins, her feet swinging, telling me about a new book she was reading. It was the most normal, beautiful sound in the world. That night, after Piper had gone, I went to my bedroom. I opened the new safe I'd had installed in my closet. I took the original deed to the house, the one I had retrieved from my bank box. I placed it inside. Then, I took the small velvet box from my dresser. I opened it and looked at Tom's watch. I placed the box inside the safe, right next to the deed. The property and the memory, my inheritance, and his, finally returned to their rightful place. I woke before the sun. I made my coffee. I sat in my chair, in my living room, and I watched the morning light hit the maple trees. The last battle was over. The house was quiet. It was mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us an extra boost by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.